Well, this is Rodney Thompson with History 151 for Winona State University. And we're talking about whether Harry S. Truman uh, found it necessary or whether we believe it was necessary that the atomic bomb be dropped on uh, the Japanese towns of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because the war had started to come to a close. The Germans had been defeated, but on the Pacific theater, the United States was still very much at war with Japan. And when the United States decided to drop the bombs, they had already been developing these bombs for quite a while and had tested them in the desert of New Mexico and knew the devastation that they could cause. And when the bomb was dropped on these two cities, there were approximately 200 and just a little over 200,000 people that were killed. And the reason why I think it was necessary in reading all of the history, and I'm not sure if you're asking for a personal opinion here, but because there's a lot of differencing of opinions in the text and in the different references to why the bomb was dropped. But America had already suffered a lot of loss of life at Iwo Jima and Okinawa, and I would imagine that the battle weariness of the United States, along with the rest of the countries, was building. They had already lost over 400,000 lives in this war. It was one of the most costly wars on the world in the history of mankind. And to use these bombs to end the war quickly, I think that Harry S. Truman saw that there was value in that. And some argue that because this was mass destruction, killed a lot of civilians, there were a lot of civilians that died in World War II. It was not the surgical war that goes on today. There is a lot of civilian casualty that occurs during those times. And one could argue that the Japanese were getting ready to surrender already, that they had been wearing down. But there was a lot of national pride with Japan, and they were a country that it was not within their honor code to surrender. And so I don't think that they would have surrendered. I think that they would have fought until the last man standing, as it were. And so dropping the bomb was necessary to end the war. I think the other thing that the bomb did is through intelligence, both on the United States side and the Russian side, they knew that both of these both of these countries were developing the atomic weapon, and so there was a behind-the-scenes race to this atomic weapon, and so in dropping it on Japan, it did send a message to the world that the United States is a formidable power that had to reckon with. And it was about 4 years later that the Russians came up with the nuclear weapon, and then the Cold War then ensued, and the arms race to see who could stockpile the most weapons was something that each country continued to build. And I think just having those, with the knowledge of having The atomic weapons, both on the Russians and on the U.S. side, has kept the world at peace. I think that had we not dropped the bomb on Japan, on those two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, uh, the world would not have seen the devastation that those type of weapons can cause. And now the modern warheads are multiplied more uh, powerful than those bombs that were dropped on Japan. And so, with that knowledge, I think that we have not launched a nuclear attack since then, because I think that everyone knows how devastating that could be. The United States and the Russians, if they both launched a nuclear strike, the world as we know it would not exist, because there would be such cataclysmic devastation worldwide. And so, even though it looks like those over 200,000 lives were a lot to pay for the war and close to the end of the war, I think that those 200,000 lives was just a small amount of lives to pay for lasting world peace. When you look at the grand scheme of things in World War II, there was estimated, the numbers escape me of why it's so wide. You would think that they would have a more narrow scope of how many died, but they're talking 35 to 60,000 or 35 to 60 million people died during World War II, and that doesn't include the 6 million Jews in the concentration camps. And if you add those to the total, we're talking almost 70 million people died during this war. That's a lot of lives. And when you compare that to the 200,000 that were lost in the Japanese atomic bomb attacks, it's pretty small. So I think it was necessary that we drop the bomb, and Harry S. Truman did make the right decision.